Today on Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out, we are celebrating our 100th episode. We are featuring some of the best tips from all of our episodes as we wrap up our month on health and wellness.
Welcome to Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out with Julie Coraccio. Every Tuesday at 1 p.m., hear easy to implement tips on decluttering all areas of your life: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic. Learn how to release clutter and get organized to create the life you choose, deserve, and desire. An award-winning professional organizer and coach, Julie is passionate about supporting people in clearing clutter so they can share their gifts with the world and live a more joyful and fulfilling life.
I have been fortunate to have the opportunity to interview a lot of amazing people. I kept having to whittle down the list, and it wasn't easy. Since we are focusing on health and wellness, I attempted to narrow down episodes that focused on this in some way. I am happy to report, as I have been editing these episodes, I am much improved since I first started back in September of 2014, so thanks for your patience. Remember, you can listen or watch every episode mentioned here in its entirety. Episode 9, How to Declutter Your Kitchen with Allison Lush. What are the common reasons you have found that kitchens get cluttered? And again, you have such a unique background with your catering as well as organizing that I bet you see things that others haven't.
In our lives, our behaviors change, our lifestyle changes, the things that we own changes, and as with the rest of our environment, if our environment is not kept up to date with our actual behaviors, clutter occurs. That's the number one reason. So doing a refresh, a reboot on our lifestyle and what we actually need is the number one step to dealing with clutter in the kitchen or anywhere in the home.
What have you found some of the consequences of having a kitchen that's very cluttered? You know, my observation is if it's really cluttered, you might not want to cook a healthy meal and you're just going to grab something pre-packaged. Or, I know in my home, my home is organized and clutter-free in the kitchen. I just like to bake and eat too much. So that's why we just eat too much. At least we're aware of it. But we keep all our medicines in the kitchen. And if, again, if that's an area that's cluttered, you might not be compliant with your meds. What have you found?
Clutter can occur from anything. If we start, first of all, by looking at what do we own? Do we use it? Is it current for our lifestyle now? Does it have a home? That's an extremely important step. If we need to have it, where do we use it? If you need to have your meds in the kitchen because that's when you remember to take them, then it's perfectly appropriate to have them in the kitchen. They just need to have a home. So they need to be perhaps visible to you, so maybe like a basket on the counter, maybe next to the peanut butter, whatever works for you. One of the golden rules in organizing, which is the key to decluttering, one of the golden rules is look at your own life and how you live. There are no rules about how we should live, how we should organize. What works for you is what works for you. It's your home. It needs to be fluid so that you can get through your day without feeling that you're in traffic jams all the time. I need to get from point A to point B, but there's all this crap in my way and all this wasted time. So we need to figure out what those blockages are and work through them so that we can get what we need done quickly and smoothly so that it works well in our homes. And decluttering is one of the best ways to do it. But the first step is looking at how we live and figuring out our individual lifestyle. Comparing ourselves to other people is a wasted energy. If we look at other people, it should be simply to look at examples of how we can find solutions that work for us, not comparing.
November bonus, Sane and Clutter-Free Holidays, Just Becauses with Julie Coraccio. Here are some examples of just becauses. You have turkey for Christmas dinner just because that's what your family did growing up. However, you want to start a new tradition of cooking Italian but feel guilty you're letting a family tradition go. You have to buy for everyone in your extended family just because that's how it has always been. But you're spending money you don't have and it leaves you stressed out and in debt and you're not sure anyone likes or needs the gifts you buy. Aunt Maple will be upset if you don't have a slice of a world-famous triple chocolate pumpkin pie just because she slaved all day in the kitchen, but you're committed to eating healthier and not going completely overboard. You really want to slow down and savor the season, but just because you have always gone to your neighbor's open house, you feel obligated, despite the fact that they leave you exhausted and drained. Remember, these scenarios and the one I just mentioned are a form of emotional and spiritual clutter. Here's a take action item for you. Where can you eliminate a just because? And if you're looking for extra credit this season, examine another area in your life where you do something just because. For example, you're friends with someone who always takes from you and never gives back just because you've been friends for 20 years. Is there another just because you can let go of? Like many things in life, this is a process. Celebrate where you are able to make changes and commit to making more changes in the future. Episode 21, Decluttering the Fridge and Pantry with Liz Taylor. What are the most common areas or ways people create clutter in the fridge and pantry?
The most common ways I think people create clutter in their fridge and pantry are buying too much food at one time and not keeping track of really what they have and what they need. But I find like people buy a lot more than they actually need. I buy certain refrigerated foods, but I actually don't buy a lot of refrigerated foods. I buy some more freezer foods or pantry foods, things that are going to stay good longer. But I try not to overbuy. If nobody needs 500 tomatoes. Try to purchase that stuff more on a weekly or daily basis and not store it. And also, the other thing I find is and I can be guilty of this too. I love my condiments. I have a bazillion condiments. I used to tease my mom about it, but I do that now too. And condiments go bad too. So if you buy the giant jar of mustard, but you don't use it, it doesn't stay good. So then you're kind of stuck with the mustard that you don't use and this you don't use, and then you don't go through it, and then it becomes just kind of a tangled mess.
What are some of the adverse effects of having a cluttered pantry and fridge? Because I think sometimes people don't think of the consequences. Oh, it's a mess, but it's really not affecting me, but actually it is.
I found that the biggest consequence is obviously eating out. It's so easy just to drive by and pick up food on your way home because the idea of cooking just sits on people's shoulders like a weight. And they're hungry and they're tired and they just are like that one little thing in their way, which is the idea of getting their meal together is just overwhelming. It's just like the last straw. And it's just, that obviously is the biggest thing. I mean, the next thing is obviously a connection. I feel like, as I always say, the kitchen is really the heart of your home. And when you kind of sit down with a bag of food and everybody takes it off in different directions, you're losing that, even if it's 30 minutes, to connect with your family or, even for yourself, even if you're a single person, even for yourself to sit down, think for 5 minutes. I eat lunch by myself every day. I eat at home. I use that time to read a book. I use that time sometimes to just meditate. So, it's just a time to either reconnect with yourself or reconnect with your family. And those are the two biggest things I see people missing when they don't eat at home and cook at home.
Episode 24. The Pursuit of Being Busy and How It Creates Clutter with Ingrid Vanderlock. How is this belief of being busy and being busy is a good thing driven by consumerism? Do you think if we had simpler lives, simpler pursuits, and different definitions of success, would we want to be so busy?
There is a writer, his name is Hamilton, and he writes about politics and consumerism, and he wrote that sense that most people know by now that says people buy things they don't need with money they don't have and to impress people they don't like. The answer is no, because if we don't have to do all those things and we don't have to have all those stuff, we would be so much more relaxed. More time, we need more technology, and if we need more technology, we also need more people to free up more time for ourselves to do more things. So I think the answer, if we are in that mode bubble, the answer is always more.
Can you tell us how being busy can create clutter for us? Mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever you'd like.
Yeah, there is what comes first, because busyness creates clutter, and clutter creates busyness, because clutter is that what stands between you and the life you want to be living. If we do the essential things and we let go of all the non-essential things that come on our way, then the way is free to reach our goals and to do what we want to do. So I think, yes, clutter makes us busy, but also being busy creates a lot of clutter, because all the things we create with being busy, things we do, we need stuff to things we do, or it needs place in our agenda, in our computer, or in our head. If you want too much and what we want, we can't do it at that moment, then it gives arrears. Those arrears, I think that's the thing that gives most clutter and costs most energy, if the things we want to do, if we can't do it anymore, and we see there is a delay or there are arrears.
Episode 29, Clearing Unconscious Beliefs That Create Clutter with Kimberly Lovell.
How do we get unconscious beliefs? How do they get trapped in there?
This is a question that everybody's asking, because we all have unconscious beliefs, and essentially they come from various places. So we have beliefs that are held on what I call the core level, which are beliefs from our childhood. We pick these up from our parents, from the people that are around us and that look after us, from teachers. Up until the age of about 7, we are like little psychic sponges. So everything is going in, and we're taking everything on. It goes into our unconscious mind. So if you imagine your mind, the top, if you imagine like a little triangle, imagine the iceberg. The top part of that triangle, the little bit that's above the surface, is the conscious mind, and that's just 5%. Underneath the water, the iceberg, is the massive 95%, and that's the unconscious. So it's all going into our unconscious mind. It comes from our caregivers. It comes up to the age of about 7, when all of our beliefs are kind of pretty much formed by that age, which is quite shocking, really. Also, we have beliefs that are on the ancestral level, so they're handed down either through the genetics or in our morphogenetic field. They're coming from, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. They say it goes back 7 generations, but I think sometimes more. So we've got ancestral beliefs. We've also got collective unconscious. So we're constantly bombarded with information. We have society programming us. We've got a collective unconscious, and everything goes into that. And so there are beliefs that we're handed down, religious beliefs, all that kind of thing. So it's, we're bombarded, literally, and these beliefs go in to the unconscious, and then we're kind of like, well, we're saying that we want one thing, and then we're not experiencing it. It's because we've got these unconscious beliefs that are in conflict with what we say we want.
Can you share with us how these unconscious beliefs can create clutter? And, in this show I talk about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, because there are all those aspects of clutter.
Yeah, so it's all connected, essentially. Whether we're talking about physical clutter or mental, emotional clutter, it's all the same thing. And really, these beliefs, what we want to do is to identify what the beliefs are and to transform them. Okay, so how you find out if you've got clutter, well, we're talking about physical clutter. I'm sure you've spoken lots about it. We can just look around and we can see that. In terms of the mental clutter, it might be that you've got a lot going on in your mind. It might be that you've got anxiety or you're stressed. That's a good sign that there's, mental clutter going on. But the other thing is, we all have these unconscious beliefs, and I see those really as being clutter. It's whatever's getting in our way, whatever's kind of stopping us from reaching our goals, from living our dreams. That is clutter. It's things that we no longer need, and often they've served a purpose at some point in our lives, So we're always gaining from everything. We're always learning and growing. Sometimes it's a case, like you clear out your physical clutter, we need to clear out our mental clutter and get rid of some of these limiting beliefs or old beliefs that are no longer serving us. If you're wanting accomplishing something in life, whether it's to quit smoking, lose weight, I don't know, make a certain amount of money, create your own business, whatever it is that you're wanting, if you're not moving forward with your dreams and your goals and you're not seeing results, then there's some resistance or unconscious clutter that's going on the it's not just the mental level, because we hold energy and we hold memories and experiences, but it's in our unconscious mind. So that's a clutter that we're going to be digging into and kind of finding out a bit more about today. Yeah.
Episode 30, Writing to Release Mental and Emotional Clutter with Vince Gaglione.
How can writing help us let go of mental and emotional clutter? And talk a little bit about the benefits of that.
Well, the first thing I think it does is it kind of like forces you to calm down. It forces you to slow yourself down. With all the distractions that we have nowadays when it comes to messaging, Facebook, video, phone, whatever, there's like alarm bells going off everywhere. So we're constantly bombarded by these things. And it takes away from, how we're feeling. Like, it doesn't seem like we're as in touch with ourselves as we used to be. For me, it was a means of unplugging and trying to get rid of all the distractions and just being able to sit, look inwardly and actually try to bring some of the stuff that I was feeling to the surface. So that's how it helped me.
I know that you write stories and you've published, but you've mentioned journaling. How can journaling be a valuable tool to help us clear our mind of clutter?
Well, what it does is it allows us to actually get back in touch with ourselves. So, I mean, I think everybody, had a diary or a journal when they were a kid, and the same thought applies today. No matter how old you are, you can always learn something from it. If you have something that is on your mind, maybe it's something that you don't want to talk to somebody else about. It's just something that you want to deal with. That's a great way of doing it. So you just open up a page, start writing, and the thoughts, the emotions kind of bubble to the surface through that writing.
I have also found when I'm nervous about a conversation, or if I have a really important conversation, I usually draft out what I'm going to write. And I do that, one, because it helps me kind of gather my thoughts, and also because it allows me to kind of get the emotion. So I kind of have what I want to say instead of going kind of crazy with the emotion.
Yeah, it actually helps you kind of work through it and process it in a more logical manner. So if you just put a couple thoughts on the page, then you could go from there and then move to the next thought and the next thought. So it certainly helps in that aspect, because a lot of times we have things in our heads that maybe there's like 20 things going on, and if you just try to like write it all out, it's like jumbled when it's out there on the page. But if you go through it step by step, then it becomes, you kind of present it in a more logical way, and your mind can process it in a more logical manner.
Looking to change your life? Are you ready to release all your clutter, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual? Our Declutter Your Life is a year-long how-to, go at your own pace workbook course to guide you through the process of clearing clutter, also available by 3-month individual topic. Learn more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com.
February bonus, Having Gratitude to Release Clutter with Julie Coraccio.
When we are in gratitude, it's hard to accumulate emotional and mental clutter. You cannot hold two opposing thoughts at once. When we are grateful for how much we have, it lessens our need to get more and more, which can easily create physical clutter. By having gratitude, we raise our vibration and can attract what we choose to in life. What are you grateful for? Do you share your gratitude? I love social media because you can really learn a lot about a person. Examine your posts, tweets, and comments. Are yours mainly positive and uplifting and expressing thanks, or are they mainly complaints and negatives? We can often be on autopilot and not even aware of what we are saying. Look at your friends' posts that are generally upbeat and positive. Do you get that they have a sense of gratitude? Observe your coworkers, friends, and families. Do you sense a pattern with people who are thankful for what they have? My grandmother had Alzheimer's, and we were fortunate to have a caretaker, Tressie, who was a phenomenal human being. After my grandmother died, she and her husband lost their house to a fire. My parents and I went to visit them. As Paul was a minister, they asked if we could all pray before we left. We held hands, and Paul led us in a prayer. He and Tressie talked about how grateful they were for all they had and how they wanted our family to be blessed. I started to cry because I was so moved by their ability to be thankful after having lost everything and to want to make sure we were taken care of. When you have gratitude, you can see what truly matters.
Episode 36, Learning to Say No to Declutter Your Life with Julie Coraccio.
A lot of us have problems saying no. If we aren't able to do this, it can create clutter in our lives. How can it create physical clutter? I had a client that couldn't say no to storing things for people. In his basement was his work area to finish furniture, which is how he made his living. He had 3 huge armoires he was holding for someone. One of his first assignments was to tell this person they had 2 weeks to get the armoires out or they were going to be sold. I have also seen others who hold onto boxes or furniture from relatives or parents because no one else wants them, yet they don't want them thrown out because they belong in the family. This can become physical clutter for someone. What about mental clutter? Have you ever had someone ask you to borrow money and you couldn't say no? That could increase your anxiety or fear of not being paid back. You can also have extreme mental clutter when your thoughts can become so overpowered by others that you might not be able to separate what you truly think from someone else. What about emotional clutter? Not being able to say no can make you really angry. Even if you don't do anything now, eventually your anger will come out. Another way we create emotional clutter is if we have this happen a lot and we're unable to forgive others who haven't respected us when we say no. Not forgiving people can take up an enormous part of emotional energy. If you're unable to say no, you can create spiritual clutter. I once had a friend who told people she was visiting me. I lived in another state at the time, but she was actually having an affair. I asked her not to do it anymore. Had I found out and not said anything, I would have gone against my integrity, and this would have caused spiritual clutter. I've also read a lot of stories about people who embezzle. They know that it's wrong, but they just aren't able to say no to the person asking them for help. And that can have serious consequences if you don't say no. You could end up in jail.
Episode 37, Practicing Self-Loving Kindness to Declutter with Julie Coraccio.
Didn't understand this stanza until recently, but I want to share this with you. When you learn to love yourself, you will dissolve all the stones that are cast. You will learn to burn the icing sky and to melt the waxen mask. Yes, to have the gift of true release, this is a peace that will take you higher. I think that's such a great stanza. And to me, what they're talking about is, you know, when you love yourself, you live your life. You follow your passion. You don't stop your passion because someone says, oh, you can't make a living at it. Or, you know what, you're too tall to be a dancer or whatever it may be. I want you to think about that. Ask yourself, whose voice is that when you hear someone telling you that you can't do something? Because a lot of times, you know, when we're kids, we're born perfect and life is groovy and we know we're these amazing beings, and then society happens or our parents happen or a teacher happens. You know, I was telling someone the other day, I can recall to you what that teacher said to me in 2nd grade that wasn't really nice. Now it doesn't affect me anymore, but I still remember it. And it's really important if, you know, you're hearing a negative voice or says you're not good enough, dig deeper on that. Is it really your voice or is it someone else? So I want to talk about ways we don't love ourselves, because some of you that are listening might be like, you know what, of course I love myself. And it's not true. There are many ways we don't love ourselves, and I think some of them are more subtle than others. The first is, do you overeat? Do you drink too much? Do you spend too much? If you loved yourself, you wouldn't do that. And another thing I really want to emphasize at the beginning, there is no judgment here. You know, my goal is that you figure something out, you have that aha moment, and to be gentle with yourself. Life is a process. You know, I'm continuing to learn. I did a one-on-one mentorship program working on myself, and I'm still learning. I'm a layer like an onion. My suggestion is always just start somewhere. Just do something, because the present moment is the power of change. And as long as you're moving forward, you will be able to do something. So look in that area if that's a way that you don't love yourself. Another way we don't love ourselves is not following our heart or our passion or our soul, because we think we must do what our mom said or what others says we should do or society said we should do. This is the number one regret of the dying. I personally believe when you follow your heart, the income will follow. But very interesting, think about that. Are you doing something because your parents, your friends, your family, society said to you, this is what you must do? Again, think about that. That's the number one regret of the dying.
March bonus. Declutter your life with breath with Julie Coraccio.
Deep breathing can support you with physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual clutter. And best of all, it's free. If you are releasing physical clutter and becoming overwhelmed, stop and take some deep breaths. If you're stressed, seeking mental clarity, take deep breaths. If you feel yourself starting to get angry, breathe deeply. Struggling with forgiveness or jealousy? Try some breath work to get you centered. I've learned to become very aware of my breathing. I've noticed when I get upset, angry, or become ungrounded, I stop breathing. My jaw is usually clenched, or I hold my breath, or it is very shallow. Do you notice when you hold your breath, stop breathing, or do not breathe deeply? I now try and practice breathing daily. This has had a huge impact when I do it. When I start to have a knee-jerk reaction, I try to remember to breathe. I have signs around my office with breathe to remind me. Someone sent me a nasty email the other day. I felt like I got punched in the stomach. By breathing, I could get centered, back in my body, and respond not from anger, but from a place of neutrality and clarity. There are lots of benefits from breathing from the diaphragm and deeply. I encourage you to do your own research, but some of the ways it supports you are: deep breathing releases toxins, releases tensions, can lessen pain, it strengthens your immune system, supports digestion, and boosts energy.
Episode 42, Using Aromatherapy to Declutter Your Life with Rachel Seavey.
How can aromatherapy help us release clutter?
Well, aromatherapy can help us release physical clutter, mental clutter, emotional clutter, spiritual clutter. You can use it by putting the aroma into the air. I like to use peppermint oil for physical clutter. For mental clutter, I like to use lavender. It really helps relieve anxiety and stress and depression. Spiritual clutter, I like to use rose. It really gives you a sense of well-being. And emotional clutter, I really like to use the combination of rosemary and myrrh.
What should someone look for when looking for a quality oil? And I so appreciate that you talked about not ingesting oils, because I know that you can do that, but I always want everyone to be really careful, because you just can Google and find out about how people have burned themselves or have horrible, horrible accidents. So do you have any advice for people to know that they're getting a good quality oil?
Absolutely. There are a lot of synthetic products, candles, lotions, and stuff on the market. You absolutely want to make sure that they're made with high-grade quality essential oils. And a fabulous resource is the National Association for Holistic Aromatherapy. And you can go on there and poke around and see if it's something that you'd be interested in.
What other benefits are there besides helping you release clutter to aromatherapy that you've found?
There are a lot of benefits to using aromatherapy and essential oils. We could go A to Z. There's acne, burns, constipation, dandruff, eczema, feng shui. I could just go on. There's a lot of good stuff out there, although not scientifically proven.
Episode 43, What's Your Clutter About with Peter Walsh. Why do you think we all have so much stuff?
Well, I mean, for me it comes back to the fact that we're caught, we're social beings, and we're caught into this whole mindset, whether we like it or not, that more is better. This idea that if one is good, two must be great. And the second thing is we're caught into the idea that we show our success. We display I guess how not how good we are, but we display how well off we are by a show of what we own. You get a pay rise, you get a larger car. And so much of who we are and what we project is strangely tied to what we own. And I think we then get caught very much into what I call the product and the promise. We start to buy things believing that if we just buy the right stuff, we'll be able to acquire the life that we want. And so we buy things expecting that they will deliver on a promise. Skinny jeans will make us more attractive. Beautiful cookware will make us better chefs. You know, makeup will make us look more attractive and sexy. You know, a slick car will make us seem, you know, more successful. And often what happens is we end up with a home full of products and, you know, lives still, those promises still not fulfilled in our lives. So, you know, it's just this interesting interplay between who we are and what we own. And I think we're all kind of caught into that to some extent.
Absolutely. So what would you say to someone who's struggling with that? Being like, okay, the jeans that are going to make me skinnier, the makeup that's going to make me look more attractive. What do you say when working with someone?
Well, for me, it's interesting, you know, when it comes to stuff, when it comes to getting organized, the biggest mistake that people make, and this will sound really weird, really counterintuitive, is that people focus on the stuff. And these issues that we all deal with have nothing to do with the stuff in the first instance. The place we all need to start is to ask ourselves, what's the vision we have for the life we want? What do you want from your life? Not what do you need for your life, but what do you want from your life? What do you want from your home? What do you want from this room? What do you want from your job? What do you want from your relationship? And then ask, will this item, if I bring it into my home, will it help me create the home that I want? If I enter into this relationship, will it create the life I want? If I acquire these objects, will they help me create the space that I want? And if they do, then go for it. But if the stuff you own doesn't help you create the life you want, my question is, why do you own it in the first place?
Episode 46, Releasing Emotional and Mental Clutter with the Havening Technique with Annie Day.
Can you chat a little bit about how, if we're not aware of our emotional clutter, how that can be affecting us? You know, for instance, when we worked together, one of the things you picked up on is I wasn't sleeping. And I had told no one that, and that information came out. So talk a little bit about how this can help us maybe be more aware of something we don't know that's going on.
I think what it does is, once you're in a relaxed state, because quite often we're only doing shallow breathing, and quite often we're unaware that we're not taking a really deep breath, and so once our mind becomes starved of oxygen and the brain isn't getting enough oxygen, it goes into fight or flight mode. So basically we get really badly, negatively affected by an overload of corticosteroids and adrenaline. So it floods our body, which is good when, for instance, there's a slight amount of adrenaline tonight because I'm on your wonderful radio show. But the point at which it overwhelms you, that's when it's really unhelpful. So by doing the havening and stroking yourself while you're saying positive affirmations to yourself could actually make a real big impact into stopping you from doing that. So literally, as soon as you find you're having an unhelpful thought, you could immediately put in something a bit more positive just by saying, everything I touch turns to gold, or everything I touch is successful. So literally, as soon as that unhelpful thought comes in, just by stroking yourself with these what are quite soporific movements, can make a really big difference to your mental state. But also just the fact that most of us aren't getting enough physical touch as well. So this is a really good way of actually hugging yourself and being very gentle to yourself. I've discovered that men especially have really benefited from the havening technique, because most of them have said that they don't even put their aftershave on gently. Women tend to gently smooth our creams into our faces. Men's go slap, 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 slap. all over their faces. So they've said this is probably the first time since they were a child that they've actually touched themselves gently with positive intent. So that's been a really good part of doing the havening. Their relaxation levels are a lot higher as well immediately.
Episode 49, Decluttering with the Fly Lady. Body clutter or clutter in general, how does that affect your body, mind, and spirit?
Well, it's the clutter is in your mind, and the results of the clutter that's in your head, it is behind, all around you. It builds up on your backside. It's in your living room. It's in your kitchen drawers. Clutter is everywhere because you're not taking care of yourself. And when I can teach you to finally love yourself, the results of that are you start losing a little weight because you're eating better and you're drinking your water. You get rid of the clutter that's on all your hot spots, and before you know it, your house is gleaming and you're shining from the inside out.
You know, I love that. That's so central. Love yourself first, and then the rest will follow.
Hey, they tell us on an airplane, if the oxygen mask come down, you got to put yours on first.
That's so true. So what is chaos, and what does that stand for?
Chaos stands for can't have anyone over syndrome. Do you live in chaos?
I don't.
Good.
I don't. Although I have to tell you, I have changed. I've read all your books, and there's one thing. Well, first, the DH, which is Dear Husband. You'll learn a lot of acronyms tonight if you're not familiar with the Fly Lady. But that was a light bulb moment for me, and I believe your husband Robert said to you was to take the socks off and not turn them inside out, which saves you a step when you laundered them. And I think I love
brilliant.
that. I mean, it is. It's brilliant. I'm like, he needs to get an Academy Award or something for that, because that has literally made a huge difference. And I don't have clutter. I'm organized. But one thing I did that I changed since reading your books was I used to leave dishes in the sink. Now, not a ton, and I'm not talking about the pan that needs to be soaked overnight, but I used to leave the dishes in the sink. And after you're reading your book, I do not do that anymore. A little bit I'll slip up now and then, but I have to thank you to that. So that leads to my next question. Why does it always start with a shining your sink?
Well, because you got to start someplace. Why not? Why not the sink? So that's where it started with me when I sat down to try to figure out why I was not organized. I was determined to know, why I couldn't keep house. And what I realized is I had never established a habit. And when you don't establish a habit, then you have ineffective habits. So I picked keeping my sink clean and shiny as that one thing to start with. And I could obsess about it. I spent 2 hours shining it the first time. I had to take a chisel to our hard water and the calcium deposits around the rim and around the faucet. And I worked diligently at keeping that sink clean and shiny for the whole month of January. And psychologists tell us it takes 21 days to establish a new habit. Well, no, it doesn't. I think we need a little grace in all of it. And so, and being kind to me, I made 2 New Year's resolutions, and one of them was to get organized, and the other one was be kind to me. And that's why shining the sink changed everything, because then the countertops got cleared and the dishwasher got empty, because you're not going to put a dish in your sink, so you've got to have a dirty dish disposal unit. And then the stove, it looked around the room and said everything else is clean me too. And before you knew it, it was easy to go into the kitchen and start cooking a meal for yourself and not feel guilty.
Looking to change your life? Are you ready to release all your clutter, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual? Our Declutter Your Life is a year-long how-to, go at your own pace workbook course to guide you through the process of clearing clutter, also available by 3-month individual topic. Learn more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com.
Episode 53, Feng Shui. Change your space, change your life with Shelley Sparks.
Well, Feng Shui is the Chinese art of placement. So it helps you to arrange your environment, to bring the best results possible for yourself. So good luck. Many times people contact me because their love life is in distress, or they'll contact me if they're having problems with money, or sometimes just family issues. And by rearranging your environment, you can help to smooth the path for things to go much better in your life.
Now, can you talk about the basic principles of Feng Shui? And, my understanding is, after reading, you're the first Feng Shui person I've talked to, is clearing the clutter is a basic principle of Feng Shui.
Yeah, clearing clutter is really, really important. And that's actually one of the tips that I was going to offer in terms of the 3 things that you could do today to help your life. But it's much, much more than clearing the clutter. Not everybody lives in clutter. There's many people that I work with, and their homes are just, totally uncluttered. Mm-hmm. And then there's people that I know that have a certain amount of clutter, and it's okay. So it's really about balancing your environment. So, for instance, on a very, very basic level, if your home is too dark, you need to lighten it up. If all of your rooms are colored white, then you need to add some color to it, because that's where you're living. That not only reflects you, but it also shapes you. If you're not living in a balanced environment, your life can become unbalanced.
Episode 57, Decluttering Your Life Through Forgiveness with Maria Kramer. How not forgiving, whether it's ourselves or someone else, can create emotional, mental, or spiritual clutter.
If you can think of yourself, whenever we have lower vibrational emotions like anger or bitterness or resentment, think of it as all these emotions get stuck on a cellular level. So it's literally like living with a garbage can that you don't empty for how many years you're old.
We've got a lot of garbage out there for everyone, I'm sure.
It was funny. I wrote a little piece about this yesterday. I'm like, and then all of a sudden the memory of when the New York sanitation strike was many years ago. And you drove down the street and it just piled up. So that's sort of what happens in our cellular memory and in our bodies when we hold on to these heavy, I almost see it on an energetic level like coals in our bodies. It's like our cells become filled with this dark muck. It causes blockages in our energy system, in our meridian pathways, so energy can't flow properly into our organs and our systems, the nerves, the muscles, the bones. It affects everything in our physical body as well as in our energy field.
Can you talk maybe and give a concrete example for people who are listening who might not be that familiar with energy work and like, okay, so it causes a blockage, say, in some area, but how would that translate into everyday living?
If I'm not forgiving, or if I've had a lot of judgments or a lot of anger or disappointments in our life, it typically will affect us in a way that we are not living in the present moment anymore. We are still connected to that event 20 years ago when my mom said, if you do this, blah, 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 I will never forgive you, or whatever it might be. And so when that happens, something happens in our neural pathways, also in our brain. And so it literally affects how we think and how we believe. And it just amplifies. And so first there was the incident of I'm not feeling worthy, I'm not feeling loved, I feel abandoned, I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted, there's no space for me. It affects us in so many different ways. And it creates now these belief systems that get anchored in. And then, because it's now a belief system perhaps, then all of a sudden other people show up in our life that actually compounds and make that belief true. And so we start this whole pattern that then will create more of the same in our lives.
Episode 63, Declutter Your Life. Stop comparing yourself with Julie Coraccio. Comparing yourself to others can create a lot of spiritual clutter and waste a lot of energy. If you are always comparing yourself to somebody else, how can you celebrate and share your gifts? You are a unique individual with unique talents, physical characteristics, and personality traits. How could you compare that to someone with a completely different set of one-of-a-kind everything? It's human nature to want to compare ourselves to others. I also believe with all the advertising and messages we are bombarded with daily, it's hard not to let that affect us. However, if we focus on others, then that takes away time for focusing on ourselves. We all have our journeys to take and lessons to learn. Even if you are comparing yourself to someone with similar circumstances, looks, skills, etc., you may very well have different journeys and different reasons for having similar experiences. Comparing yourself to someone else is easy. It's a lot harder to do self-reflection. When you find yourself comparing yourself to someone, stop. Take a deep breath. Spend 10 minutes on some self-reflection. What weaknesses could you improve? Or what about yourself would you like to celebrate? When you stop comparing yourself to others, you can see your gifts much more easily and then start putting them to use. Often clutter represents something else. Maybe it is to fill a need or to keep an emotion buried. Can you dig deeper and see why you may be comparing yourself to someone? What message is your spiritual clutter trying to tell you? What are you blocking that you can release? Like anything, this takes practice, but by stopping comparing yourself to others, you will free up energy as well as reduce your spiritual clutter. Episode 64, Conscious Order, Releasing Mental Clutter with Annie Rohrbach. What is conscious order? When you say that, what do you mean?
By that I mean when we are more aware, when we're more conscious of where we are and where we want to go, and what's keeping us stuck and why we're not getting there. When we become more aware of all that, when we become more conscious of that and learn some tools, we can create the order and peace of mind that we desire.
Let's talk about mental clutter and how having that around affects you mentally, physically, spiritually.
Well, when you think about clutter being stuck energy, if you will, if you think about clutter and how it affects you emotionally, spiritually, it's so draining. And the more you have, the more draining it is, and the harder it is to get started. It's very overwhelming. It can create a lot of shame and discomfort and really get people so stuck that they don't know where to start. And so the reason that I believe in starting with the mind is because our mind is cluttered with so much stuff, all the things we have to do, all the regrets from the past, the things, plans for the future, all of that kind of thing. There's, the things we're bombarded with every day in conversations and with the media and that kind of thing. And so when our minds are going 90 miles an hour, when we're just so, that monkey mind, that busy mind, that, oh my gosh, how am I going to ever get this done? I have too much to do. All those things that we keep telling ourselves just keeps perpetuating that clutter in our mind. So my approach is to identify and clear out that clutter in our mind, because then it's easier to clear out the clutter in our home and our office and our life.
Episode 67, Shop Less, Live More, How to Stop Compulsive Shopping with Jill Shivers. Now we've got a question from Geraldine I want to ask for you. She would like you to repeat the definition of wholeness.
The definition of wholeness. For me, wholeness is about feeling your life fully and having a sense that you have enough, that you are enough, and that there is nothing out there that is going to complete you. And for me, specifically in relation to shopping, that was really critical, because the messages that we are on the receiving end of in stores and in advertising, etc., is that the thing that's going to complete you is out there waiting to be purchased. And to me, that is a message I have deliberately chosen to tune out, because nothing out there is capable of giving me that sense of wholeness, that sense of fullness. And shopping my wardrobe for a year was one of the pathways to connecting in that sense of wholeness. And I believe it is our natural birthright to feel that sense of wholeness. And part of our access to it is about removing things sometimes.
Episode 73, How to Ask for Support to Clear Clutter and More with Julie Coraccio. I first want to talk a moment about word choice. I am very deliberate when I use the word support instead of help. It is a challenge as a writer because I don't like to repeat words. I use support because I see all of us as equals. To me, when using the word help, it might imply that someone is less than. I don't feel that way with the word support. To me, it makes us equals. I need computer support. That doesn't make me dumb. It's just an area I don't have much experience or expertise in. Play around with the word. See if using support works for you. It might support you in asking for support. I really wanted to say help just then. If you see it as coming from a place of being equal as opposed to seeing yourself less than. I believe we are all connected and we're here to support one another. Yet many of us grew up with the idea that we must go it alone and be tough. We aren't meant to rely on others. I have many clients who have struggled to make that first call because they feel they should be able to do everything themselves. I can see and feel their relief when we get started. Let go of the mental clutter that needing support is bad. It is okay to ask for support. As they say a lot in sports, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Throw the idea out the door that you have to go it alone. Many of us would be the first to offer assistance, but hesitate when we are struggling. Most people are going to give you a different perspective that might lead to some aha moments for you. Episode 79, Clearing Energetic Clutter Through Space Clearing with Julie Coraccio. Get to know your house. How does each room in your house feel? Does it feel good? Does the energy feel light and happy or stuck and heavy? Do you tend to gravitate towards one room over others? How does that room feel? Go around and do an energetic clutter check for each room and start becoming familiar with what it feels like. If you found some rooms that feel stuck, here are some ways you can clear that energetic clutter. Experiment with a few of these and find what's right for you. You can use sage. Here is a big smudge sage stick. What you do is you light the stick and you smudge the room. So you go around the room and smudge stick to clear the energy. I also like to use a seashell. I like bringing nature into elements when I can. So for instance, I have this seashell that I have when I lived in California and a teeny sage stick. So what I will do is light it and then I use the seashell to collect any embers so it doesn't get the room dirty and it can catch the ashes. What's important, I found, is to make sure that you get everywhere, such as in corners, because that's where stagnant energy can really collect. In your closets, don't forget those areas, under your beds. If anything feels really stuck, spend more time on it. Episode 83, Decluttering Your Life Through Awareness with Julie Coraccio. The more aware you are, the easier it is to navigate life. The easier life is, the less stress you have. Life is also more enjoyable and fulfilling because you can release what is unimportant. How well do you know yourself? How aware are you of yourself, your family, friends, neighborhood, community, the world? Clearing the clutter inside and out focuses on decluttering and getting organized. Why? Because it's been my experience when you get rid of clutter and get organized, you can create the life you choose, deserve, and desire. If you're listening or watching, you have, at some level, an awareness that clutter or getting organized is holding you back, so you are finding resources to help you. The more aware you are, the easier it is to release clutter. Most of us run on autopilot. Many don't make the time for examining their lives and becoming more aware. I'm going to encourage you to not limit increasing your awareness to clutter, though. Most of us have many areas where we would benefit from increasing our mindfulness. I did an episode called What's Your Kryptonite, where I talk about discovering where you get stuck easily. For me, it's beauty samples and leopard print, so I have to be extra diligent when I am around either of those. But can you go deeper? Can you bring a greater awareness? I had a client who had a stack of newspaper articles and magazine clippings about 3 feet tall. I asked her what it was, and she said they were articles she was waiting to send to people. I asked her how long she had the stack. It had been around 2 or 3 years. As we talked, she made the connection that she believed that if she didn't keep in contact like this, sending the articles, that her friends and families wouldn't love her. As soon as she voiced this, she knew it wasn't true, and we were able to recycle the whole pile. This is just one example, and in some instances, there are going to be more layers, but you get the idea of how you gain more awareness. The more aware you become, it's easier to release what doesn't serve you. Look around at your physical clutter. Is there a sudden insight or increased awareness you have?
Looking to change your life? Are you ready to release all your clutter, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual? Our Declutter Your Life is a year-long how-to, go at your own pace workbook course to guide you through the process of clearing clutter, also available by 3-month individual topic. Learn more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com.
Episode 84, Using EFT to Reduce Clutter with Sue Hannibal.
The important thing to know about clutter and hoarding and things like that is that it's highly metaphorical. So what I want your listeners and viewers to understand is that their attachment to an object or a memory of an object is linked in the brain. So that's why we bring home souvenirs from Paris or Disneyland or whatever. We want to bring home a tangible memory that's going to link us through an object to the fun times. But unfortunately, you can also have objects or possessions that link you to something unpleasant. And so that can be, if you had a great childhood and you've got your childhood teddy bear, you're going to remember warm and fuzzy times in mommy's lap and being read stories. If you had the childhood from hell, you're going to have unpleasant memories. So I would say don't keep the teddy bear if the unpleasant memories are going to trigger you. You need to understand when you're having a tug of war over an object is what is really going on. What are you in resistance about? If you've got a closet full of clothes that don't fit you, that are out of style, maybe you're hanging on to that for metaphorical reasons, one of them which might be deprivation. If you felt like things were taken from you or you had a lot of loss and grief in your life, it's not about the dress. Or it may be you're wishing that you could still be that person that wore that size 10 in 1970. You're longing for who you used to be. You've lost part of who you used to be. So, successful aging and integration of different parts of our life is supposed to be a relatively seamless thing. I mean, you might complain about the extra 20 pounds when you're 50 or whatever, but, most people manage to make that journey without, going on Prozac, although some do go on Prozac. But if you're in a clutter situation where you're drowning in it, you've got some emotional baggage that you need to clear.
Episode 91, Setting Intentions to Clear Clutter with Julie Coraccio. I am a huge fan of setting intentions. I see my intentions as a roadmap to live more mindfully and to be present. From intentions, I can create my goals. When I am focused to know what is important, it is easier to release what isn't important, i.e. clutter. When you set your intentions, it should be easier to release clutter as it allows you to become more clear and focused. With intentions, there's a good chance you will make choices that support what you choose and desire to create. I have an overall intention that I pick for the year. I also like to focus on one intention monthly. I also check in with myself if I need to be more aware. For example, I attend a monthly women's group, so an intention before class would be to be fully present during class. That might seem like a small intention, but how many of us have our mind wandering somewhere else while meditating, waiting in line, shopping, that takes us out of the present. If I can set my intention for my 3-hour class, it builds my muscle to keep setting and following through on intentions. Episode 92, Relationship Clutter, Dealing with Negative People with Julie Coraccio. Most of us have to deal with negative people. It's part of life. As I have mentioned before on this podcast, we tend to become who we hang out with. If you notice that a lot of the people you are spending the majority of your time with are unhappy and complaining, you might want to examine how this is affecting your life and creating emotional clutter for you. I have seen many people, including myself, struggle with dealing with people who bring them down. They don't want to be mean or hurt someone's feelings, but at the same time, they are suffering. It is okay to have healthy boundaries and make a change when it comes to people in your life. Here are some things to consider when dealing with negative people. In your professional life, it might be more of a challenge. If you have an extremely negative coworker, you probably don't have the option to fire them, so you need to have a strategy of dealing with them. In your personal life, you have more leeway. If you choose, you can end a friendship. Here are some things to think about. How long have you known the person, and what is the level of friendship? Are they a relative or someone you must have interactions with? An ex-spouse, for example? How has your relationship been in the past? Has there perhaps been an event that have changed things? Has your friend mainly been a good friend and it's just been recently that they've been negative? These are all things to ponder. Episode 94, Energetic Clutter, the 7 Main Chakras with Tamara Himes. What are chakras?
Well, chakras are basically the energy points within our body. So all of our body is just made of this energy. And these energy points within our body helps us to remain balanced and healthy within our lives. There's 7 that, today we'll simplify it. There's 7 of them, but it goes much deeper and further than that. So, but for the sake of the show, let's just focus on the 7 today.
When you're doing a chakra reading or someone is doing a healing on someone, what exactly are they doing with the chakras?
So what we do is when we are connecting to someone else's energy, we are basically healing the aspects that are, maybe some chakras are clogged, there could be some attachments. What we're making sure is going on is we're making sure that those energy points are moving in the direction that they should be, and they're kind of like pinwheels, and that they're flowing, and that they're healthy, and everything is happy and balanced. So basically what we're doing is we're looking at the energetic body to make sure that the whole body is energetically balanced.
Takeaways from today's episode. When it comes to reducing clutter, it's important to look at all areas of your life: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic. Think outside the box when looking to reduce clutter. Today's episode contains some non-traditional ways to release clutter. Stop. Take a breath and ask if that person, object, or choice supports the life, job, relationship, etc. that you are trying to create. If it does, embrace it. If it doesn't, let it go. Go out, clear the clutter to create the life you choose, deserve, and desire.
Thanks for listening to Clearing the Clutter Inside and Out. Sign up for our newsletter and receive a free copy of our 10 clutter-free living tips. Ready to create the life you choose, deserve, and desire? Learn about Julie's services including coaching, classes, affirmations, aromatherapy, and her unique How to Declutter Your Life course and more at reawakenyourbrilliance.com. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.